Hi, I'm Dr. B, Psychiatric Nurse Practitioner. Today I want to talk to you about how to use your anxiety as a strength. We've all experienced anxiety. It's a normal emotion, but it can be debilitating for some people. If it's prolonged or extreme, this is where it becomes debilitating, sometimes even paralyzing for people. Sometimes you even seek treatment during this time. It can impact your cognitive ability, sometimes your behaviors and choices if you're very anxious about something. It can even begin to affect you physically, like a hormonal imbalance or neurochemical imbalance. It can cause inattention and really affect your function. But when anxiety is periodic and low on a scale, then it actually can be productive. And I think sometimes when we think of anxiety, we think of kind of all or nothing, and that, you know, we either want no anxiety or we allow it to kind of overtake us. And so what I want to teach you here is the ability to bring it to a mild level. You don't have to get rid of your anxiety to function in it. You can actually use that anxiety to be productive. So if you think of like a number line scale of 1 to 10, and 1 to 4 being mild anxiety, this is the anxiety that allows you to be productive. If you are a college student and you're about to take an exam, that mild anxiety keeps you focused and allows you to pay attention in order to study and remember what you need to for that exam. If the anxiety gets to a moderate level, it begins to inhibit your ability to remember and focus. And so at that point is when you use your coping skills to bring it down to a manageable level, that, 1 to 4, where it's actually improving, your studying. When it's above 7, and these are arbitrary numbers, but when it's severe for you, and it is causing a lot of, even paralyzation and not being able to function, this is when you really need to step back. This is maybe where you need to seek professional help, but definitely using some of the skills to bring it down to a mild level. So what I want to do here is teach you 3 things that you can do to bring that anxiety to a manageable level. So my first thing is kind of my pet peeve, right? Stop believing that you don't have control. So I have so many of my clients will come in and tell me, I have anxiety, I can't get rid of it. They've kind of owned it and they've allowed it to control their life. And so the number one thing I'm telling you is that you can control your anxiety. If it is at the severe level, you may need professional help in doing that, but seek that, because everyone can get control of that anxiety by stopping ruminating on it. So rumination kind of means where you just keep thinking about something over and over and over again. And in anxiety, it's something negative. So you're thinking about this negative thing over and over again. You've got to stop that. You've got to stop your brain from doing that. There's different techniques that are out there, thought stopping, different coping mechanisms, deep breathing. I know everyone tells me, I've tried that deep breathing and it doesn't stop my anxiety. It's not going to stop your anxiety, but it can significantly decrease your anxiety to a manageable level. And that's what we're trying to do. Remember, back to that scale of 1 to 10, we're trying to bring that anxiety down to a manageable level. And so in that, commit to working through what is causing that anxiety. So this is where choice mapping comes in. And choice mapping is this formula that I've created to kind of help us determine what are our root causes, what are the core connections that are going on with our anxiety. Oftentimes there are triggers. Sometimes they're known triggers, especially in like a post-traumatic anxiety. If there's something that sounds like a gunshot, that could be a known trigger. But sometimes people will come to me and say, I don't know, it overwhelms me. I encourage you at that moment to stop and map that out, because there is a core connection. And as you have insight into that, you will have better control over it. So again, remembering we may not be able to get rid of the anxiety, but we can bring it down to a manageable level. So that's number one, to stop believing that you don't have control and stop ruminating. Number two is learn to reframe and rewire our thought patterns. So we all have these negative thoughts, but we can rewire them. And there's lots of, people that talk about, just think positive, and positive reinforcement and constantly thinking positive will change those negative thoughts. And that's true. But they say that you could potentially have to say something 10 times positive to counteract one negative thought. So think about that as you're trying to rewire. But also, you can examine those negative thoughts. Sometimes we have begun to believe these negative thoughts just because we've said them to ourselves over and over again. So kind of examine that. Is there any evidence or proof that is actually true? And is there proof that if you looked at it in a different mindset, could you change the outcome? And again, looking at that worst case scenario and the consequences of believing both the positive and the negative, and weighing those things. And just, continue to examine those thoughts, and that you can potentially change your understanding of it, or at least make it less distressing, right? So, for example, if you looked at being afraid of flying, and you have this overwhelming anxiety to flying, and you actually refuse to get into a plane, and you have, anytime you even think about going flying, you get this severe anxiety. Well, I challenge you, because the first thing you don't want to do is to avoid what causes you anxiety. So I encourage you to actually schedule a plane trip and begin to start to work through those things, right? What is the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario, let's say you are afraid of dying on a plane crash. I encourage you to examine that evidence. What is the statistical reality that you will die in an airplane crash versus a car accident or some other accident, right? I'm not saying that bad things do not happen. If you know anything about my life, you know that bad things can happen. But when we allow anxiety to overcome us, we are giving that anxiety control. We're wasting a lot of energy on the things that haven't even happened yet, right? So those are the first two things. One, to stop believing that you don't have control and stop ruminating. Reframe and rewire your brain. And then the last thing is to create a personal vision around the positive or future achievement that is kind of opposite of what that anxiety is. And so when we talk about choice mapping, we map things out, we figure out where they're coming from, we identify and organize and, decide where these things fit into our lives and how they're still affecting us. And then we choose how to kind of disconnect that so that they're not affecting us. And then the final thing that we do is start to work on our personal vision, and how we can, and it's not always just us. So let's say you're talking about, you're a mom and you're very anxious about something horrible happening to your child. And you're, constantly worrying, and you're not allowing that child to get out of your sight. So the first thing you could do is come up with your personal vision. You want that child to be mentally and physically healthy. And so to do that, they need to have some independence and experience life. So in your personal vision, let's say that you created that as your personal vision. What are some actions that you can take? You can teach safety. You can provide safe experiences, and you can release control over time. So I'm not just saying you just don't be anxious and let your child do whatever, right? There's a vision to that, and then there's steps in order to release that control. So these steps can be used with whatever is causing your anxiety, but first you have to figure out what that is, right? So again, to review. One, the first thing is stop believing that you don't have control over your anxiety, because you do. You can, and you can learn to. Number two is to reframe and rewire those negative thoughts into positive, realistic things in your life. And you can do that by the third thing of creating a personal vision that is productive for that anxiety. So I hope you've learned something here today, that you've learned how to take that anxiety that we all feel and make it productive in your life. I do believe that you can do this. In the description box below, there's a link to download a free PDF. It's a choice opportunity worksheet called Anxiety as a Strength. Also, if there's anyone that you know that would benefit from this information, please share it with them. Also, like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, you are mentally strong.